Let's take a moment and look at quotation marks in HTML. This is a bit of a strange subject because there are a number of different methods for describing quoted content, and some of them don't work in the ways that we would expect. The block quote element has been used, and I say abused here. The designers of HTML like to think of this as an abuse of block quote. I'm not so sure I see it that way, and we'll see why in a moment. The block quote element indents the text. It always has in every browser I've ever seen. It renders the text as indented on both sides. And so, understandably, designers who want to display various pieces of text indented, those pieces of text which don't necessarily happen to be a blocked quoted piece of text, they would use block quote to indent, sometimes nesting block quote elements to indent it even more. And the designers complained that people were abusing, or as they say, overloading the tag to do something it was never designed to do. Unfortunately, it's always been implemented that way, and so I don't think you can blame the designers for using it that way. Therefore, they had to come up with a new element for quoting text, which is the Q element, and here we see it around the word here, and we've seen it before, but let's just take a look at it in the browser, and it puts quotes up there. Doesn't work in older browsers. Older browsers ignore the tag, as all browsers are supposed to ignore tags that they don't understand, and so you can't really use it reliably unless you have control over the browsers that your users are using. You can't really use it reliably to insert quote marks. So there's a couple of other ways to get quotes. The simplest way to get quotes, and probably the most common way, is to use quote characters. That may seem a novel approach, but it does work. And so there's no law against it. There's nothing in the HTML specification that says you can't. And so when you render the quotes as quotes, you type them in as quotes, the browser, no surprise, renders them as quotes. We saw it move that quote over a little bit. I guess that's just a way that the browser works. Now, the Q element, which if I just say undo, it should put it back. I'll undo again, and it'll put it back. The Q element is designed to make quote marks that are language specific. In other words, if I were to go in here and use the lang attribute and say the language equals French, you would expect it to use those little French angle quotes that people use in France and in French-speaking countries. Unfortunately, I've still never seen a browser that does that. If I reload over here, we'll see the quotes remain quotes, although that one moved over a little bit like it did before. I'm not sure why it's doing that. So that doesn't really work the way it's advertised, although I imagine in the future it may. So we go back to the old quote marks, and yet I'm going to show you the other way to insert quote marks, and a lot of people do it this way, and I'm not exactly sure why. There is a meta character called QUOT, and because it's computerese, they feel compelled to misspell it. And there it is like that, and we'll go ahead and save and bring it up in the browser and reload. And you'll notice that there's the quote marks. It moved over a little bit again like it did before. So these are the different ways to insert quote marks, the right ways and the not so right ways. Pick the one that works for you. For my money, I usually use good old quote marks from the keyboard. You can use the meta character, you can use the new Q element, which for my part I plan on waiting until the browser's implemented a little bit more consistently, and maybe an extra year for other people to upgrade their browsers so that I know that people will at least be getting quotes where they're supposed to. But as I said before, those are the different methods of inserting quotes, and I suggest you use the ones that work for you.